Wow! Listen, not every single time an NHL head coach are you gonna get a video like this, and not every time a head coach is hired are you gonna get a video like this, but it's a huge name and a complete shock. The New York Islanders have fired head coach Lane Lambert, and while that part of it might not be such a surprise, his replacement is. Patrick Waugh is now the head coach of the New York Islanders. Now, unless you're like basically a human baby, like a tiny little baby, you know who Patrick Waugh is. He is one of the best goaltenders of all time, arguably the best goaltender of all time, and has by far and away the record for NHL Stanley Cup playoff wins. That's always one of my favorite stats. Martin Brodeur is in second with 113 Stanley Cup playoff wins. Patrick Waugh has 151! But does that make him the right fit as head coach? Well, that's the question, isn't it? One thing's for sure, the Islanders had to do something. At the time I'm shooting this video, the Islanders are only 2 points out of a playoff spot, out of a wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. That might not sound that bad. It sounds worse when you realize they lead the league in overtime or shootout losses with 11. That means just shy of a quarter of the Islanders' games this season have not gone to overtime or the shootout. No. Way more than that have gone to overtime or the shootout. 1/4 of them have been overtime or shootout losses. They have a record of 19, 15, and 11. That doesn't sound that bad because by the standings, it's not. But at the end of the day, through 45 games, it's 19 wins and 26 losses. On top of that, they're behind the 2 wild card teams. Right now, that's the Leafs in the top wild card spot and the Red Wings in the bottom one. The Capitals are 1 point out of a playoff spot with 50 points. The Devils are 2 points out of a playoff spot with 49. They are tied with the Islanders, but ahead of them in the standings. And then, of course, there's the Islanders. Here's the big problem. You are 6 points back of the Carolina Hurricanes for the 3rd spot in the Metro. So odds are, the way things were going, you weren't going to catch that spot. Could you catch the Leafs? You're only 3 behind them. Possible, but you've played 2 more games than them. The Red Wings are only 2 points up, and they've played the same amount of games. Okay. But even then, you would have to leapfrog the Capitals, who have played 2 fewer games, and the Devils, who have played 2 fewer games. And it appears that the straw that broke the camel's back was losing to a Chicago Blackhawks team who, barely exaggerating, don't have players at the moment. On top of them being a rebuilding team, everybody's hurt, especially Connor Bedard, the most notable player there. Islanders were down 3-1 to the Blackhawks, heroically came back and ended up losing in overtime. Again, for their league-leading 11th overtime or shootout loss. I've already mentioned that? I've already mentioned that. So, they had to do something, and they brought in a big name to replace Lane Lambert. Patrick Waugh. Dude, it's a name that gets your attention. I won't lie to you. Like right now, the Minnesota Wild fired their head coach earlier this season. Who's the guy who replaced him? Some of you watching this video right now are going, the Minnesota Wild fired their head coach earlier this season? Question mark. Yes, it was Dean Evison, and he was replaced with, you have 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, pencils down. John Hynes. How many of you got it? And I'm not ragging on John Hynes. He's been the head coach of the Devils, the head coach of the Predators, and now the head coach of the Wild. He hasn't been out of work long when he has been out of work. But dude, it's Patrick Waugh. What makes Patrick Waugh so fascinating to me is his resume doesn't add up with the hype. To that, you might say, Steve, what are you talking about? It's Patrick Waugh, winner of the Jack Adams Trophy as a rookie head coach. And while that's true, it is leaving out some details. The hype for Patrick Waugh as a head coaching prospect was definitely warranted before he made it to the NHL. From 05-06 to the 2012-2013 season, Patrick Waugh was the head coach of the Quebec Remparts, and they never missed the playoffs the whole time. They never won a championship, but they were always in the playoffs. Finals, lost in the first round, second round, third round, second round, third round, second round, second round. That first season in particular, the Remparts were 51-12-2. So then he makes it to the NHL, and what does he do? He immediately starts knocking walls down, and I mean literally, his first game behind the bench, he was knocking over the partition between his bench and Bruce Boudreau's. Remember that? And the Colorado Avalanche went on to have a preposterous season after that, 52-22-8. They were unreal. They were one of the best teams in the NHL. Except the idea that Patrick Waugh's Avalanche were one of the best teams in the NHL was a hot topic of debate at the time. You might remember that at the time, analytics were really starting to come into their own in hockey, and a lot of analytics did not smile down on the Avalanche a lot. They played high efficiency hockey. They got a lot of saves, they had a high shooting percentage, a lot of indicators that there's some luck here. And it's hockey. There's always going to be some luck, but you don't want your opponent to have the puck more than you. And who cares what the analytics say? Who cares what all the outsiders and the naysayers say? They're one of the best teams in the league, and here they are in the playoffs, only to lose in the first round. Goodbye. Who cares about what happened in the playoffs? That's in the past. You can have a great regular season, except the Avalanche didn't the next season in 14-15. The Avalanche were 39, 31, and 12. Similar to the Islanders now, yes, that is above Bettman 500, but that is more losses than wins. And sorry to spoil it for you, they didn't make the playoffs. Then the next season, the Avalanche were 39, 39, and 4, which is dead on Bettman 500. And again, more losses than wins, and again, they didn't make the playoffs. How did he do the next season? He quit. That dude quit. He called up Joe Sakic, his buddy, his teammate, his general manager at the time, and he said, I'm not going to be the head coach here anymore. And this was like right before the season. The Avalanche were forced to replace Patrick Roy with Jared Bednar, and the Avalanche that season were really, really bad. Now, what happened following that? Well, a lot of good things. The Avalanche eventually recovered, actually rather quickly recovered with a few trades here and there. Don't answer your phone when Joe Sakic calls. And of course, Jared Bednar and the Avalanche ended up winning the Stanley Cup. After a handful of years off and a ton of rumors that involved Patrick Roy going to the non-existent Quebec Nordiques, Roy eventually made his return to the QMJHL in the 2018-19 season. The Quebec Remparts were 27, 28, and 13 that season, lost in the first round of the playoffs. Meh. The next season, they were 27 and 32, and how did they do in the playoffs? We'll never know on account of that was canceled due to COVID. During the 2020-2021 season, which was super weird, the Remparts were 17, 9, and 6. It was a shortened season, again, COVID, and that record might sound pretty good. But once again, that's the same amount of wins as losses. These past two seasons, though, 51, 15, and 2, lost in the third round. And this past season, 53, 12, and 3, won the championship. You can't do better than winning the championship unless you try to win it again. So Patrick Roy took his chances with the NHL, and the Islanders jumped at him. Now, the reason I talk about his coaching resume like that, it's not a bad coaching resume. I mean, he just won a junior title. But winning a championship in junior is not the be-all, end-all of how good of a coach you're going to be in the NHL. For example, DJ Smith not only won an OHL title with the Oshawa Generals, but a Memorial Cup, and right now that dude is looking for work. Patrick Roy may be exactly what the Islanders need, because there is some talent on that team. They're a team that works extremely hard, and maybe all they need is that shot of adrenaline that we already know Patrick Roy can provide because we've seen it. The other side of the coin is I'm not sure many head coaches who don't have the name Patrick Roy with this resume would have this kind of hype. Yes, he won the Jack Adams in his rookie head coaching season, but that dude has won a grand total of 0 NHL Stanley Cup playoff series as a head coach, and also quit. You rarely ever hear of an NHL head coach quitting or resigning unless they're kind of sort of allegedly forced to, Mike Babcock. So, what do you think of this hiring? Patrick Roy to the New York Islanders with Lou Lamoriello as his GM, by the way. That is fascinating. Even more fascinating that Patrick Roy, who has had probably more noise around him than any other non-NHL coach these last few years, this was dead silent. No one mentioned this at all. Patrick Roy is now in the same division as John Tortorella. That's amazing. Rod Brindamore. Basically, the whole Metro is hilarious. Do you think this makes the Islanders a playoff team? Do you think this is going to be a gong show? Do you think if Patrick Roy currently has a beard, Lou Lamoriello is going to make him shave it? Yeah, you didn't think of that one, did you? Let me know what you think in the comment box down below. But for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Subscribe to SDPN. And in the description down below, tickets to our all-star events at the Rec Room February 2nd and February 3rd. It's gonna be a blast.